Hi viewers, this is Dr. Dhanasekhar from Childcare in our YouTube channel. Welcome back, and it's been a long time since I've done an episode in English. As per your request, I've tried to do some important videos in English too. Now this video, what we're going to speak about today is going to be about the color of stools what your child or your baby might have, and it's very important that you need to understand about this, because the reason is when you start worrying or when you should not start worrying is extremely important. All I've tried to do is to give propagation education through different media platforms, and our channel is available on Instagram at Childcare. We are available on Facebook at Childcare, and a YouTube channel which is a prime focus is available as Childcare too. Now coming back to the primary motive of today's talk, the talk is going to be about the color of stools. Now when I want to show you the color of stools, naturally I'm going to show you some cards which are just in front of me to tell and show you what stool color you should be worried about. Majority of the mothers do ask me a question about the child's stools, because that's something that they see because they clean the child's bum, of course, every day, and they would want to know whether there's something to worry about or not. Now to tell you and show you some colors that you may experience or see in the child's stools every day is not necessarily of concern all the time. So the stool's color can vary depending on the good bacteria and bad bacteria in the mother's milk and the child's intestine in the first few months of life, that the color of the stools can be very variable. So one day it might look about, say, this color, which is completely normal, and one day it might look even pink in color, which is completely normal too, or sometimes you may have a stool that is slightly pale in color but not necessarily to alarm about. So these three stools, which I'm going to show you as three different colors, are completely normal as long as they vary between one to another, and one to another. So these three stools is again something very important. Irrespective of the age group from 0 to 16, the stool color can vary. And naturally, in a baby, a mother would of course ask a doctor like me to check if this stool color is normal, and the color what I'm going to show you is right here. So this stool color, what you can see, is basically in green color. Now what does a green stool mean? A green stool doesn't necessarily mean anything significant. Now who would you see a green stool in? Number one, in the first few weeks after birth, when the mother is breastfeeding the baby, the stool color will vary depending on the bacteria in the intestine, in the child, and also the milk composition changes in the mother, and that's basically the reason why the color of the stool becomes green in color. Second thing, if your child has had a recent course of antibiotics, the stool color can change to green. The reason is very simple, because antibiotics would not necessarily spare any good or bad bacteria, because it is going to go in and knock off practically everything. So that's the reason why the stool becomes green in color. But then remember, this is only going to be a transient phenomenon, and after that it is going to become normal in color into either of these. Now the third thing you need to understand is, imagine or remember, if you have had a baby who has had a recent abdominal surgery, the stools can also look green in color because of the handling of the intestine by the surgeon. And that's completely normal too. Fourth, but the most commonest thing, is when the baby is getting fed both on the breast and also on formula. So if the baby is getting fed both formula and breast, the stool is likely to be green in color. A lot of mothers get very worked up and ask me, "Doctor, why isn't my child's stool yellow?" And I always tell them, green color does not ring an alarm bell. It isn't a red flag sign, and you don't need to worry about it, and one has to understand that green color can be entirely normal. So that's about the green color part. The green is a green tick, so be positive about green stools, absolutely nothing to worry. Now coming to the most important part, when should I worry about my child's stools? Now imagine you have a child who is passing a stool of this color. Now nobody would like to see a color of stool which is white. This is called as clay colored stool. The reason why it's called clay colored stool is because china clay is white in color, and that's the reason why it's called clay color. When you see a clay colored stool, basically what you would actually understand is that the stool is white because the bile from the liver is not mixing with the food in the stomach. So when there is no mixing of bile into the food or the milk consumed, the stool tends to be white in color. Now white stool in a little baby, we call this as a pale color or a clay colored stool, and this indicates a problem perhaps in the liver. The reason is, if there is white stools every day, that's something that you need to bear in mind. Now, a second thing, if your child is consuming excessive amounts of cow's milk, I'm talking about children over the age of 2 years, they can also have white stools, and this is something that is very, very commonly seen. It can also be seen in children who consume a lot of ice cream or paneer or anything that is actually made of milk or milk products in excess. That's basically when you would see a stool which is white in color. So remember, white color stool is something to worry about. And always in older children, when children have jaundice, the eye color changes yellow and the stool color changes white, indicating that the bile is not mixing in the food what they consume, and that's the reason why the stools look white in color. So there is a definite alarm sign when you see white colored stools. Now, coming to the last but not the least but the most dangerous thing you need to understand, the stool frequency of a child is anywhere between 1 to 3 times per day. And some children pass stools immediately after eating, but if the stools are loose in consistency, that's perfectly fine. If they have more than 3 loose stools per day, then we call that as diarrhea. And if the stool has got, say, mucus, which is basically like phlegm, or you see blood and fever and more than 3 times per day, we call that as dysentery, and that's when the stool turns red. So the red color stool indicates nothing but blood, and blood in a baby is not a good sign. We call that as colitis, which can be seen in children with cow's milk protein allergy, which is something that we see very commonly. The next thing is, of course, food colorants. Do not forget that tomato ketchup and food colorants can change the stool color red too. And if that being the case, one has to remember to exclude and to remember what they had the day before. So beetroot, ketchup and anything red in color will make the stool color change red. Going to the next part of it, in older children, when the stool becomes red, the first thing you need to always think is blood. And especially if it's happening every day, or if the child is complaining of going to stools just like that, they have an urgency, they have to go right to the stools immediately, then you need to understand that something not right. But my major concern as a pediatric gastroenterologist comes when the child wakes up in the middle of the night wanting to go to stools, and that is something called as nocturnal stooling, and that's something I would be really worried about. Now let's try and understand the color of stools according to the child's clinical problem or everyday routine. And that makes a big world of difference to the child's medical problems or medical history, and one has to take and understand everything with a pinch of salt. And a lot of parents, I'm sorry to say this, do sometimes ignore abnormal things for a long time, and then the child becomes sick and then they came to us when these things are beyond repair. Keep watching the channel, keep writing your comments. I'll be looking forward to hear from you, and what your comments are going to say is going to seed a lot of ideas into my head, which will translate into good topics for us to discuss in the future. Keep watching SS Childcare. Thanks for your support and keep watching. Bye-bye.